All right. Well, good evening, everyone. I appreciate you all taking some time out this evening to join our virtual neighborhood meeting. This is for the Poplar Farms and a revision to the development plan. As you can see at this time, we've identified our two home builders in the community here on our home screen, which we did not have the last time we are through the original approval when we came through a few years ago. And so we have Meritage Homes building the alley loaded homes within the development, and Signature Homes, which some of you also may be familiar with, will be building all of the front load homes in the community, the larger 65-foot and up lots. Just as a quick refresher for everyone, because like I said, it's been a couple years since this development plan was originally approved. The graphic that you're seeing on the screen is the original development plan as it was approved back in 2021. At this time, this revision does not change anything on this approved plan as it pertains to the number of dwelling units that we had approved, the amount of open space, the type of lots that we had approved, or the acreage, and that includes roadway layout and general lot layout. So right now, everything's progressing through site plans and into construction as we see here. We have identified, as we talked about, the two lot types, which are the front load alley homes, which are the 65-foot wide and larger lots that Signature will be building, and the lighter colored homes that you see here are the lots that Meritage will be constructing, which are, alley loaded with garage access from the rear. So with that said, what exactly are we making this amendment request for? So as Signature Homes came on and we had some greater discussions about potential architecture and home layouts, the one thing we wanted to look at was to allow for greater architectural variety on the street front elevations of these larger home lots, the front load lots. Also with a goal of reducing the visual impact of the street front facing garages by recessing them from a minimum of 20 feet to 40 feet from the front facade of the home. What this request would also let us do is give the ability to provide options for a third car garage on these homes if a potential buyer wanted that, and then also the ability to build a slightly larger home. So the actual request that we're making to Planning Commission at this time is to reduce the minimum side yard setback from 7.5 feet on either side of the building, the lot lines, to a 5-foot minimum in width. And with this, we would also be increasing the front-facing garage setback from a 20-foot minimum to a 40-foot minimum. And as we said, this change would only pertain to the front load lots, which are the 65-foot wide lots. So how that looks graphically and how it might lay out on these lots, to the left here is the approved lot layout from the development plan as it stands today. As you can see, we have a standard single family residence with a 2-car front facing garage that's 20 foot from the front of the home at a minimum. And we have these 7.5-foot side yard setbacks on either side. What the revision proposes is to allow for a reduction of 2.5 feet to 5 feet on either side of the lot. And that allows us to provide an option where we can have an attached third car, or in this case, a detached third car with a portico share option. And in doing so, it allows us to provide a minimum of 40 foot for any front facing garage from the front of the house, kind of reduce that visual impact that those garage doors or vehicles parked in front of those garage doors might have. So back to the overall, just so it's clear for everyone, those 65-foot wide lots are the only lots that are shown in color right here. And as you can see, the majority of them are backing to open space or out towards the perimeter of the community. These are the lots that would have the reduced side yard setback to 5 feet that we were proposing. So what we'll look through now real quick is a few slides of example architecture from the builder, which would show architecturally and visually some options that we could construct currently with the side yard setbacks as they are, and then a few options that we could provide architecturally if we were able to reduce them to 5-foot wide setback. So as you can see here, fairly standard massing with a 2-car garage, approximately 20 foot back from the front of the house, minimum 2-car driveway. And we have a couple examples that just look at, different architectural character, but the same scenario with the 2-car garage front facing and the main massing of the residence. And so then the ability to go to a 5-foot side yard setback would allow us to provide options on these floor plans for, in this case, a single car porte-cochere entry, which would have 2-car garages in the back and then a courtyard garage here to the side. What that also allows is, in some cases, if the floor plan is selected that way, for additional square footage above that, increasing the size of the home, but it also decreases the amount of driveway that you have from the street, being as it turns to a single car till it gets to the rear. And it also, you can see, visually reduces how much of the garage and motor court that you see as you drive down the street. So here's just another example, different elevations, same scenario with the porte-cochere, as well as that same footprint you saw earlier, but the ability to add the 3rd-car garage to the side, increasing those garages, those front load garages set back to the rear. And then the other option that provides, if someone does not want a 3rd-car garage, if they're fine with 2, we still have the minimum front setback of the garage to be 40 feet, which pushes those garages to the rear. But it allows for a condition where we can provide a wraparound porch to give a little more architectural variety and interest to the home by having that increased width of the building envelope. And so what this might translate to, we put together a potential street elevation as you were going through the community, which would show all options that we could provide, whether that is a standard 2-car front load scenario that's recessed 40 feet, the 2-car with the wraparound porch, the 3rd car with a porte-cochere condition you'll see on a few of these, as well as a 3rd-car garage that's attached to the residence. The main thing that we get out of this, I think, is you can see, particularly in plan view, you get an idea of how far back those front load garages and motor courts would be from the street. In many cases, they're deeper than the 40-foot minimum. They're 50 feet, as well as you have the front yard setback. So they'll be quite a ways back. I think visually, as you go down the street, it minimizes the ability to see vehicles that are parked in front of the garages, toys, general items that you have, in these residents of front load garages, as well as it gives us a lot more variety to the massing of these homes by being able to provide porte-cochere option, the potential additional square footage to the main massing of the home that you see on a few of these, and just a little bit better character and feel as you go down the street, which is our main goal at this time. And so we'll just land back on the 2 approved lot layout, or the approved lot layout and the proposed lot layout, and really just open it up to a general discussion from anyone in terms of questions that they may have, or if they a better understanding of what these homes may or may not look like if this is approved.
Hi, Brian. This is Randy Fosberg. Can I ask a question or make a comment?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't know if you were part of the meetings back with the Planning Commission in Boma, but if you remember that this was a pretty tough sell to Franklin because the Planning Commission actually denied the plan. The Boma meeting was a mayor casting the tie vote break to actually have the development continue. And a lot of the concerns that city officials had were density of the development and the development not fitting in with the character of the area. While this isn't changing the density number per se, I call density still kind of a visual thing. And this is decreasing those side lots from potentially 15 feet between homes down to 10 feet between homes. So you're knocking that down by 1/3 the distance between homes. I just think that this is going to be visually, I would have liked to have seen a drawing of like your actual home fronts, your kind of simulated drawings, not photos, but your drawings of the home fronts had nice green space on the sides of them. But if you showed like, all right, here's what the original plan was with 10 of these lined up, here's what the new one would look like with 10 of these lined up. Because when you throw those third car garages in front, your building width across the front is really filling out majority of that lot. And these are going to look, a lot of these are along Clovercroft Road. It's going to look very dense with these homes riding along Clovercroft Road. So I can see why you're doing it to get more money out of third car garages and larger homes, but I think it's a negative overall from what it will look like with the houses that much more closer together.
Yeah, Randy, appreciate the comment. This is to scale, just this street. Obviously, there's not, the character images that we show are marketing images from the builders. And so, but this is, a to scale street frontage, both plan and elevation.
Right. Those are the new ones that, correct?
Yes, this would be proposed. I mean, there's options with just the 2-car.
Right. But I'm just saying like if you had that marked up with, so that's what they are with 10 feet in between houses. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. These all show the 5-foot setback in this scenario. That's correct.
Right. And that's where, I mean, visually, I mean, if you show how it was before that with the 15-foot, you've got, I mean, it's 30%, 33% more space between homes in the prior development proposal, the current proposal, correct? I mean, 15 feet versus 10 feet.
Yeah, it's an additional 5 feet.
Right. So
if the third car garage is selected.
Right. So I think visually that really, especially along Clovercroft, looking at the development, has so many of these are facing Clovercroft. That, to me, it's just visually a much more dense looking neighborhood since they are now a third closer together.
I agree.
And again, that's what some big concerns were at those meetings about it not fitting in with the character of the area and how densely packed the homes were to begin with. And now this is getting even tighter.
Yes, potentially. That's correct.
All right. Those are my comments.
Appreciate it, Randy.
Hey, Brian, just to be sure, I'm looking at the plan views. Not all of those go right up to the 5-foot side setback, correct? Some of them are
short of it. The Murphy, for instance, is, approximately 3 foot off.
If you approve it,
varies.
they can do whatever they want.
They can build, we could end up with a whole street of the smaller homes with the 2-car garages, or you could have a mix. I mean, this graphic more was to show, general visually architectural massing potential along the street and the variance, the variety that you can provide with that additional square footage to have hopefully a better looking product and, with less impact from front load garages.
I can only hear them. They can't hear me.
You're muted.
Yeah.
Is that
This
Marilyn,
is Janet Curtis. This is Janet Curtis. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Janet.
Okay. I have two concerns. The first one being that, as Randy said, this was a hard sell to start with, but part of the zoning in Franklin is provide conditions and standards to help ensure the compatibility of new development with surrounding large lot neighborhoods. You are getting further and further away from that. And I think that's a shame. The other thing is a safety concern because you're putting the houses closer together in case of a home fire. Okay, I get concerned that you cannot get equipment. If there's fencing up, you're not going to be able to get access to where you need to. And I think that that's a shame. I worry for the safety of it. And I worry because you are getting further away from what there is already in the area. And the density is not something that was wanted to start with. So taking more space between the houses away, I think is totally wrong. And I would oppose this off the bat.
All right, thank you, Janet.
Who are these people that are talking?
The people that signed in.
Was it Marilyn? Did you have a question?
I don't, but I think Tim might. Go ahead. You got something.
Yeah, I just think, that I agree with the last caller is that we're getting further and further away from what we've looked at when we did all the planning and the different things. We looked at larger type subdivisions. My homes are close to here, and I think the visual aspect of what it's going to look like is going to be noticeable even with an additional 5 feet. I just don't really see any reason for that.
Tim, are you referring to like the original city community planning for this area or the original planning for Poplar Farms specifically?
Well, I'm talking about the original planning for the entire area.
Yeah.
But I think that for this, for them to approve and put in homes so close together already, I disagreed with when it happened. And I certainly even more so disagree with the fact that it's continued to push together.
Appreciate it. Oh, Janet.
Hey, this is Andrea Orr.
Andrea.
Hey, I live in Watkins Creek neighborhood, and just from a practical perspective, just our own experience, just something to think about is we've built a covered porch on the back of our house and a pool. And I will just say we have had issues and have had to kind of work around it in terms of equipment or, machinery kind of getting to the back of our house, even with having, several more feet than what's proposed here. Yeah. So I just say that just in terms of from a practical perspective, making sure these folks have access, if they are doing anything to their backyards, for example. So I'll just flag that just because it sounds really tight, and we've personally had issues with that. We've had to work around.
Well, and that's actually something that we've worked with a little bit, and the city's been a little more proactive on. It's hard to see, but something that they've gone to is to help with that is you essentially can't impact those setbacks with AC units and fences and some of those things to help to allow for access and drainage between the lots still. But that is obviously a valid concern.
Yeah, and it just sort of it depends on, like you said, for us, it's been a unit on one side, and then some of the, we've got some hills and some, a retaining wall. It really just depends on what it specifically each lot requires.
Absolutely.
And if you're really going to have good access, just because that becomes a major issue for any of those residents, and they may not be thinking of that when they buy their house.
Understandable. Thank you. Is there anyone else that has a question or comment, or in terms of process too? I just want to touch on after this neighborhood meeting, it goes through city DRT review where they provide a recommendation for planning commission, and the planning commission will be the ultimate decider as to an up or down vote of the revision to the development plan for that. And I believe at that time as well, it'll be open to the public to speak at that meeting. And so there'll be notices going out for when that planning commission meeting is to everyone, similar to how you receive notices for this meeting virtually. So it won't be your only opportunity to share your thoughts.
Hey, Brian, this is Kevin Burgos. I live in Watkins Creek as well. Yeah, the concerns everybody else has had on the space and rather not go there, I guess, getting them so tight upon each other. What's the rough timing though? I apologize, it's a minute or two late on this. I mean, I see a lot of work going on, which is exciting, I guess. And, hopefully the rain maybe slow down for one day for them, but there's a lot going on. What can you give a rough highlight timing? Or maybe you already addressed that.
Sorry. Kevin, that was breaking up a little bit. Are you asking for a rough timeline of construction on the project?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah,
okay.
But if you can comment to that, or that's
Chris, are you able to chime in on that? Chris is with the development team in Meritage Homes.
Sure. Good afternoon. It's Chris Cowan with Meritage Homes. Related to the timeline, as you said, Kevin, we're well underway on phase one. The first phase we expect to pave mid-summer of 24, and that will have Market Street from its existing end across the creek. And if Brian has a site plan, we can kind of denote that. But we're going to be just nonstop developing, from now until well into 25. So Brian, you can kind of point out the first phase.
Yes. First phase is comes from Clovercroft and ties all the way down and makes the connection back up to Market Street. So we can meet fire requirements. And then, Chris, did you touch on going through the first 4 sections right now, kind of is where we're.
Yeah, I'm glad to share that. Part of our conditions approval with the city is that the complete extension of Market Street all the way down to 96 has to happen by the 257th building permit, I think. Which puts us into phase 4. Our first 4 phases are a total of about 229 lots. So you can kind of, so Market Street, that would put Market Street completion late 24, early 25, barring any giant market swings, which don't appear to affect our area very hard in recent light. So yeah, that Market Street would be punched through late 24, early 25 in meeting with that condition. And then the rest of the project lots, the subdivision would continue to extend towards 96 after that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Thanks, Chris.
This is Janet Curtis again. I have one other question.
Yes.
Market Street, is that going to be coming out approximately where the driveway is on the Stovall property?
I believe it's to the east, if I remember correctly, Chris, right?
Yeah,
where
I'll
the
be honest,
existing driveway is.
I've never really thought about it in comparison to the how the existing Stovall driveway came out of their property. But
I'm pretty sure that driveway is about centered on the parcel, and so it'll be a little bit to the east.
Okay, just trying to get a image in my head as to where it's going to be coming out. Thank you.
No problem.
Hey, Chris or Brian, there's been disagreement on this when I talked to different people, but was there going to be a light for sure at Market Street through to 96, or is that still to be determined?
I'm pretty sure it's a definite.
Okay. Thanks, Chris.
Brian, one thing just with Randy's comment earlier, I think Randy will show y'all a side-by-side of what the sort of a standard house box would look like. And I think what you're going to see is, yes, technically they are, 15 feet between houses is greater than 10 feet. So no argument there. Just kind of with this garage arrangement, I think you're going to see less at 10 feet than less parallel houses, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, obviously if there's not, if you don't have as many third car garages, I can see where that from the front could look like more space.
Yeah. So I think we'll do that. And,
but I guess the issue would be expectation. I guess it's hard to say, but I would think people like to have that third car garage, like that there will probably be a lot of those choosing that option.
But even with the third car, if you look kind of with the Roswell and the Rigby there, sort of center of the page that Brian has up, you still have that big space just behind the third car garage on the Roswell adjacent to the Rigby. So not necessarily seen from the streetscape, but still, but we'll put together another little exhibit of kind of bare minimums.
Right. You know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. Just the
Sure. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Chris.
I think, we'll have that so we can look at them side by side.
Hey, Brian, just to be clear though, if you go back to the photos, without the reduction in side yard setback, the builder doesn't have there's not going to be a third car garage option. Is that right?
That's right. So no third car garage, no porch condition on the side. It essentially be this massing consistently throughout, just a very elevation change, but generally that box, 2-car garage.
And with the garage pulled likely much closer to the street.
Yeah, at least 20 foot closer, probably in most cases.
And that's really been the genesis behind this of, Franklin has some pretty, not pretty, they're just, some well-written standards. And as far as garage relationship to the main body of the house or front facade of the house, and this, far exceeds that, which I would think most folks would deem as a positive.
You know how much the yard space decreases when you push that garage back and you throw that 3-car garage? Is that a significant decrease in the lawn yard space in the lots?
I don't think the 3rd-car condition doesn't decrease it, because it would be sitting, where your driveway is. There would be a potential decrease to the rear depending on the footprint. But in all these cases, as you can see, there's 40 plus feet to the rear yard still, and then 60 foot wide.
Okay.
A fairly significant backyard for this size lot.
This is Janet Curtis again. I'm curious. You said that the lot widths are 65 feet.
That's correct.
Okay. So, you're saying that by, they're going for these size yards, they're going to have a significant size backyard, but the standards for Franklin are 10 foot on side yards and 30 feet in the back. So you're saying significant, but is that going to meet the 30-foot standard? Is it going to exceed the 30-foot standard? I mean, I kind of feel like you're coming in the back door. You got this approved barely to start with, and now you're coming back and you're asking, oh, by the way, can we make a couple of changes? And I just feel that, that in and of itself isn't good. And you're asking them to change the standards of what they have for zoning. And they have them for a reason. I don't think that you should be an exception.
Well, to break that down, it wouldn't be changing the standards of the zoning technically. A PUD sets its setbacks based on guidance from the zoning ordinance. It's not a straight zoned property, but we do have the required 10-foot rear yard setback and then an additional at least 30 foot to those rear garages shown in this scenario. You potentially have the same or more depending if the garages move up. So it's still relatively the same rear yard. We're not changing the rear yard setbacks or asking for something that doesn't meet the minimum standards for the city in those respects.
Well, on the side yard, you are.
The side yards we are.
Yes.
With that, you can make that request as we went through and agreed upon at 7.5. At the time of the original development plan, we will note that we did not have our builder identified for these lots yet. And so that really, once we identified, Signature was identified as the partner with the developer, that's kind of where these conversations started with some of the options that they have for homes and why it's being broached again with staff and planning commission and you all.
Hey, Brian. Hey, one other question. Sorry, I apologize. Going back to your main map, this isn't the person that's called up getting all this info. Is the thought to connect, or where is it at these days of connecting into Watkins Creek? Is that still to be determined, I guess, or what's the current?
So we were required on the approved plans to show that connection. Chris, you may know better, but I think ultimately, I know the connection that was supposed to be, similarly, Taproot was required to show that connection, but it ultimately was not connected through the county.
Right.
So that may or may not be the same condition, but from city standards, we're required to show that on our plans at this time.
Yeah.
And this is John Gordon. I'm the civil engineer. I've been in contact with the county on that connection to Watkins Creek. and the county's looking at that to see what the county response is going to be. City of Franklin requirement for us to show on the plans is to make the connection, and then that's being evaluated by the county.
We will, I mean, as a neighborhood, Watkins Creek, we petition the county to not make that connection, as you were mentioning at Taproot Hills. So we'll make that same appeal to the county to not connect at this connection as well. And it would be nice if they could determine these things ahead of time, so you guys as a developer could not have a wasted space in there if you didn't, you could have used it for something else possibly, but I know the city requires connectivity, so we have to go through that, and we'll reach out to the county to do what we need to do to petition that not connect.
Yeah, I think Randy, and I think on the development side for Poplar Farms, we're all kind of indifferent to that. You know, it's more so how all that lands on the county and your end. So,
right, you guys have to just do what the city requires on your side. I understand that. Yep.
Is there anything else from anybody on the call? Questions or concerns?
Just one last thing while I've got you and Chris and John, everybody down there, is I've asked the city, and I keep reaching out to them like every month or so, but it's kind of unknown when they actually would do like the landscape planning for, you know, like especially along Market Street and between Market Street and Watkins Creek. I don't know if there's any way to get notified by you guys as well, like when they want to work on that. We just wanted to have a little bit of input on that landscaping plan if possible along Market Street and Watkins Creek, just to keep the noise and visual impact of Market Street as little as possible.
Yeah, it would likely be tied to the timing of the section it's associated with, Randy.
Okay. Is that section 4, I think?
Well, the roadway connection has to come at a certain lot type, but each of these, you know, is broken up. The phasing's not on this, but you basically have sections 5 through 8 running down the corridor itself.
Yep.
I believe we will have street trees on Market Street, so the timing of those going in might be different than the buffer itself based on construction and bonding.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was like tied to the phase of the home construction or tied to when you actually have to make that complete Market Street connection. Is it
the open spaces that those are part of are separate from the Market Street connection. They're tied to the phases.
Gotcha.
I think as we get closer to that, and you know, we can discuss that further, like you said.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you, Brian.
No problem.
Brian, if that's it, I think, you know, just want to thank everyone for getting on the call, and remind everyone that as we move through the Planning Commission workshop, we go to a workshop with them?
Yeah, we'll go through a joint conceptual workshop with BOMA and Planning Commission. It does not go in front of BOMA. It just goes back in front of Planning Commission for the final decision, and you know, it'll be a public hearing as well.
Yeah, and you'll be notified by mail for that public hearing.
Yeah.
Brian, this is Kathy Weber. I put a question on chat. I'm just wondering what the distance from the back of the front garage is to the back garage.
Let me pull that up and see if we have it dimensioned. That court, I would think typically, see when we get to the floor plans.
Brian, I can answer that.
Oh, yep, Tyler, I didn't see you join. So Tyler's with Signature, Kathy, the builder.
It's a minimum of 28 feet. So they vary a bit, but the minimum is a little over 28 feet.
And that's enough for a car to turn around and get into that back door?
Yes, ma'am. You have to back out and back through the portico share areas, but we have some homes like that in the Hamptons at Watkins Creek. And we have some in Carruthers Cove and Ladd Park that we did. And so we've done those many times, and that's the That's the distance that works well. That, it met that minimum distance.
For just a standard car, right?
I lived in one of those and I have my, an F-150 extended cab or double cab or crew cab, whatever you want to call it, with 4 doors and was able to back in and out. I mean, we make the portico shares wide enough that you can, have a little wiggle room to turn in and turn and do what you need to do to back out.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, like John said, if there's no other questions from everyone, we can give you back the rest of your evening. And again, appreciate everyone jumping on and giving us your input and thoughts. Well, obviously, we'll review all that internally as well as we meet going forward with staff and at the joint workshop and planning commission as well. So unless there's anything else from anyone, we'll let you all go and we'll conclude the meeting.
Thank you, Brian.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Hey, Chelsea, while you're on real quick, do you want me to send you the recording? Do I need to send you that file?
Yes, please.
Okay, I will do that.
Thanks so much, Brian.
Appreciate it. Thank you all.
Have a good evening.
Too.